A group of people, online or in person, saying they're preparing for a second American Civil War, or they want to cause it. Exactly the same, no difference, as people who say they're waiting for Jesus to come, or they want to make the signs happen so they can cause it to happen. And it just so happens it looks like they're literally trying to cause a world war. Yeah, it's the same fucking equation. Or others who push it one step further, because this does sound like they're masking the idea of a race war rather than a civil war or war between the states. If you're going to insist on calling the American Civil War as a war between the states, and you want to cause a second one, then that means you want each state to fight each other, which doesn't really make as much sense. Or just fighting the U.S. government, which is kind of a existential or mimetic joke almost. Or race war, which really does sound much more concrete and sounds a lot like something that the Nazis tried to induce to happen in other countries, saying race wars are inevitable because people of certain races are incapable of not having a war. Yeah, and a lot of people would claim that would be everybody who's white is incapable of going without having a race war after Adolf Hitler. Oh, and it should be pointed out that a lot of people who live in the South will state dead ass, I've never owned slaves, I was not involved in the Civil War, stop yelling at me, because they've been hearing it all their fucking lives. And then there are people who use the expression institutionalized racism, which is a real thing, honestly. In case you haven't noticed for the last few months, we're all getting it shoved in their face that it's real. But they'll also use that as an excuse to say everybody I don't like or everybody who's of a particular color has to be a Nazi. If you're from the South, you must be a Nazi. If you're white, you must be a Nazi. And who says those things? Nazis who happen to not be white or from the South. There's even an organized group online and in person you can find. A very tiny number of people who are not white supremacists, they're black supremacists. They hate white people. Now, maybe a reaction, but after a while, it isn't something you can excuse because it's literally that they wish to create an institution of racism against people based on the arbitrary fact that they're white. This isn't really any different than a person being black in this thing going on. And then you get people who apologetically scream, black people can't be racist because they redefine racism as something institutional. Okay, but the average Southerner who has no power and is living in a fucking van by the river can't be fucking racist by that dumbass definition either. Both sides refuse to be rational. Racism is the decision or the ideological process or belief system, my beliefs, or the actions of a person that can be defined easily by them using someone else's race as an excuse or their own race as an excuse. I am black, therefore I will state that I cannot control myself. I am white, therefore I can't control myself. It's inherent to my race. Yeah, Adolf Hitler style shit being spouted by pretty much everybody. No, actually it's again a tiny portion of the population. If anybody's not aware of this, let's have a sanity check. The absolute mind-bendingly large majority of people in this country are not part of this fucking argument. And I also want to point out the vast majority of times in history when people resorted to violence to cause social change, it actually did work. It's not something we want. I don't want it. But people going around toppling some statues, on being iconoclasts, literally in this case, and people going around burning a small number of buildings. I mean, really, there's a lot of people in these protests, but there's only a small number of buildings being burned. Smaller than that population by a vast amount. It's still too many, obviously. It's still chaos. But if they were all burning buildings down, you wouldn't have cities. Don't believe the news hype. But there is dead ass a group of people that always says it's impossible for this not to happen, name that subject, and I can cause it to happen, which doesn't make sense because if you could cause something to happen and you say it's inevitable, that disproves its inevitability because then you can control when it happens and maybe stop it because you can affect it. If you can affect something, it's not impossible to control. That doesn't make any fucking sense. But anyway, and they use the excuse of gun confiscation, FEMA camps, imagined bullshit, screaming, it's tyranny and I'm being oppressed, when they're perfectly free to do whatever they want to, including leave the country, please do so. And they're so oppressed that they're able to get away with showing up at a Black Lives Matter protest fully armed and not get hit in the face with a rubber bullet by a cop. But if Donald Trump wants to walk outside and shake a Bible so he can fucking get a photo op, everybody's a fucking rubber bullet target all of a sudden. And then the same dumbass president at one point reposts somebody yelling white power in a fucking video, and we're not supposed to say this is a little too many coincidences on Donald Trump's part. We're supposed to look at this and say, you know, that's a little coincidental. And then you get Fox News saying somebody in the Black Lives Matter movement did a bunch of shootings and killed people, when in fact they just fucking didn't do it. It was actually considered a psychopath. A boogaloo boy. You know, one of those people who claims that, well, it's called boogaloo because that's referring to a second, you know, like a sequel for the Second American Civil War being caused by them because they think it's inevitable and uncontrollable, but somehow they have some control over it, therefore they're empowering themselves. Or they say dead ass that they're trying to start a race war and just remove all doubt. And they yell about gun confiscation because that's somehow very, very important to them. Because being a paranoid gun owner is somehow patriotism. And then they mask racism by saying, I'm not a racist, I just don't want immigrants. You mean anybody from outside the United States at all? Okay, so nobody from any white primary population in Europe. Oh, they're okay. Yeah. And you get Fox News dancing around this. And when they get something wrong, they won't correct it. When you won't correct you being wrong, or worse, if you keep repeating the lie that you're now committing, when you repeat something that you know is wrong, you're dead ass saying something you know isn't true, that's called lying. Yes, Fox. U.S. Air Force Sergeant, hopefully former, Stephen Carrillo murdered Damon Gutzweiler and David Patrick Underwood. May and June. May 29th, drive-by of a courthouse. White van. Saying, I became unreasonable on it, which is a quote from somebody who created Truckzilla or something. And the word B-O-O-G, boog, which is a reference to Break Into Electric Boogaloo, the sequel, second installment. Boogaloo became a euphemism for number 2. Revolution Boogaloo is a reference to a second civil war. Now remember, you'll hear a lot of people say, it's not a civil war. For some reason, that's a problem. It's a war between the states. Okay, so you want a second war between the states. Oh, no. Okay, then what the fuck kind of war was it? It was a conflict. Between what? I don't want to talk about it. The entire United States has had a history of being racist in general. The majority of people in it at one time were racist, or at least bigoted. Actually, the word bigoted covers about all of it. If you stop using the word racist, and actually just say bigot, well, yeah, they're all bigots. Yeah, that's kind of where we're going here. We all have biases. I have biases as well. I don't like it when people who are yelling racial slurs get a pass because they happen to be black. I'm seeing that too currently, and I've seen that a lot. Well, I've noticed it a lot on the internet from a tiny portion of the population before a couple of months ago. Oh, what else did this asshole do? Oh, he threw a pipe bomb and shot at cops in Santa Cruz. Sheriff's deputies. It's like June 6th or something. And his posts on the net showing his attitude. But let's go back to the Boogaloo Boys. It's just a joke. Yeah, it was. It started off being a joke about everything that was a sequel being crap because it was just like Electric Boogaloo. That's not the point. The Boogaloo Boys espouse varying levels of either cheesy all the way to psychotic Nazism shit. Trying to cause a race war, trying to cause a civil war, saying it's impossible for it not to happen, saying race wars have to happen because those races are always racist. But you're the one talking about wanting it and dreaming about it. These are also people who talk about gun confiscation way too fucking much. And again, if you're obsessing on something you say is a bad thing, find a solution for it so you don't obsess anymore. If you're resistant to the solutions that would make it to where you have nothing to worry about, that means you want to worry about it. If you're worried about gun confiscation, learn how to make your own weapons. And don't talk about owning them so that you can't have anything confiscated. Again, the right to make, keep, and bear arms allows you to make, keep, and own a gun. Any gun you want. Just learn how to make the damn thing. Do it all by yourself so that nobody knows about it. That way, you can keep the secret, I hope. Don't post it on the net. Stop talking about guns. You can go out shooting, but don't show the weapon. If you want to do a video about it, explaining it, fine. But don't complain when that is used as a basis for ransacking your house. No, they don't have to have an excuse to ransack your house in your universe. That's fine. But don't give them a really good reason, because someday they'll declare that every 80% lower that was ever sold is a trackable excuse to come to your house. Learn how to make something other than a fucking AR-15. How about that? And the Boogaloo Boys, well, they're totally just a meme, except they show up armed to a protest and don't get beamed in the head with a fucking rubber bullet. The first part is really bad. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. We have a right to keep bear arms. If you're going to have an unauthorized protest, don't bring a fucking gun. Well, I want to protect myself. Then don't come in here. We're going to arrest you for being armed at a protest that's not legal. It's an illegal protest because you didn't get a permit. That's it. You have to get a marching permit or a get-together permit, because cities have to pay for the cleanup afterwards for the garbage on the ground, bare minimum, and the burned buildings, usually in this case. But no. Somebody shows up, Sergeant Steven here, shows up trying to look like he's part of the Black Lives Matter protest so he can shoot people. And what does Fox News do? They go full retard. Oh no, it was an Antifa guy shooting the cops, therefore BLM. Because they had to stick Antifa in because their viewers are so illiterate they can't look up that the new evildoers they're talking up are BLM instead of Antifa. They literally stuck with they just have the default entry Antifa. Donald Trump reposted that the guy who did the murders obviously had to be part of BLM. Neither of these groups have really, truly said flat out the truth, which is, yeah, we did what would ever make the liberals look bad, which was his plan. His postings on the net: go to the riots and support our cause. Show them the real targets. Use their anger to fuel our fire. Think outside the box. We have mobs of angry people to use to our advantage. It's now on our coast. It needs to be nationwide. If it's not happening in your area, make it happen. Show them the targets. It's a great opportunity to target the specialty soup boys. That's referring to the alphabet soup people like the FBI, police, DEA, whatever. The soup. Yeah, that's a good idea. Go after the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Drunk, cigars chomping, gun toters. Let's pick a fight with them. That's really good. Oh, and explosives, I forgot. Yeah. Go after the potentially most well-armed group possible. Or just pick a fight with some security guards outside of a building that are just rent-a-cops. Good job, murder boy. So Stephen Carrillo murdered a bunch of people. Conservative media immediately blamed it on Antifa because they're fucking stuck on that, and then finally BLM. When it was found out that that wasn't really going on, they downplayed their own mistake. In my opinion, lying again. And we got Donald Trump reposting some guy yelling white power. Are you fucking kidding me? This is my world. But no, if you're a Boogaloo apologist, stop being it. They don't want you to be. They hint at being race war inducers, or overtly say it. All of the memes are designed to get around the reality of this, I guess. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.